Most of you have probably seen, read, or heard headlines this past week about the real estate industry, a lawsuit settlement against our National Association, claims about how everything is changing, commissions are dropping, prices are dropping, realtors are leaving the industry, and more. So what is this all about? What's the reality? Is the sky falling on realtors in our industry and our agents going to be quitting? Well, most of you probably realize the media likes a bit of hype and hysteria, so I want to make sure I can be a resource for you and tell you what we do know and what we don't know. Essentially, our National Association of Realtors made a proposal to settle and try to create a win-win situation for those attempting to change the way the real estate industry works and still ensure realtors can best serve our clients. As realtors, when we negotiate the commission we will work for as a listing agent, we also have included some level of compensation from that for the buyer's agent because that was a requirement to enter our listings on our local MLS and a rule from our association, which is an issue the lawsuit wanted to do away with. As part of the settlement, NAR is no longer requiring the seller to offer compensation to the buyer's agent. Now we know that buyer representation is critical. However, the group of sellers that kicked off this lawsuit wanted buyers to pay for their own representation. Should the seller still want to offer buyer agent compensation to incentivize a buyer, we will not be allowed to show that compensation on the MLS, which is where we post our listings. So we have to now keep any compensation being offered off the MLS and provide in some other way. We can, however, offer concessions a seller is willing to pay on the MLS. It just cannot be tied to their agent compensation. So when we sit down to negotiate with a seller as to the commission we will work for as a listing agent, we will, with our sellers, help them understand what it's like to still offer compensation to a buyer's agent and what that could look like. If a seller decides not to offer any compensation to a buyer's agent, then the buyer would need to afford their down payment, closing cost, and paying for their own agent. Which the downside is this will keep some buyers from being able to purchase your home, so perhaps you could be limiting your pool of buyers. This will certainly have a big impact on our buyers because those struggling with affordability already will have one more expense or opt not to have their own representation, which I have found very few buyers are savvy enough to go it alone, unfortunately. Another key takeaway from the settlement is that NAR is requiring the buyer's agent to have the buyer sign a written agreement explaining what services and value are being provided and for what price before showing homes. In our market, we always have this agreement signed with the buyer. However, it has not always been done before showing homes. Plus, in the past, as a buyer's agent, you could see what sellers were offering buyer compensation in our MLS, so now it will just take an extra step reaching out to the listing agent to find out what the seller is offering so the buyer has an idea before seeing the home. Certainly, even if a seller doesn't offer compensation as part of their listing, a buyer can always ask for it in their offer as part of negotiations, or choose not to pursue that home. The biggest challenge I see is lower and middle income buyers will struggle affording their own representation, so could make home ownership for them a bit more difficult. The challenge I see for agents will be extra communication, extra disclosure, and strategic thinking with our clients. And yes, I believe some part-time and full-time agents will just decide they're not comfortable and confident with change, so will leave the industry. But strong agents will survive. We will adapt and continue to do our best to help our clients have smooth transactions. Of course, the proposed settlement needs court approval, but the changes I mentioned will start occurring in July. I hope this will shed a little bit more light on the headlines you're hearing about. I am always here and available to answer any more of your questions. Feel free to reach out to our team or to call me directly.